Today we're changing the oil on this 05 Dodge Neon. And the drain plug is a 16 millimeter. I've already broken it loose, so it should come right out. So we'll take this out. Never put an impact wrench on a drain plug of any kind, ever. Make sure that when you start the drain plug going back in, you start it by hand with your fingers, and make sure that you can run it all the way in with your fingers. If not, it's probably either stripped or cross-threaded, and my experience has been that about 15 to 20% of all the used vehicles I've ever seen have a stripped or cross-threaded drain plug. And it's not the drain plug itself that gets that way. It's usually the oil pan, which means you have to replace the oil pan. And they're hard to get them to stop leaking if they've ever been cross-threaded or stripped out. They'll just leak and leak and leak. So if you're looking for a new vehicle and you're in the used market, always look under it and look at the drain plug to see if it has anything leaking around it. That's a telltale sign. So while this is draining, let's see if we can reach up here and take the filter off. This is a filter wrench, and this is the kind of wrench I like because as you pull on it, it tightens up on the filter. And the harder you pull, the tighter it gets. So I'm going to let that drain for a little bit like this. And while that's draining, I like to drain it until it's just barely dripping. If you take it to a quick lube, they're going to pull that plug out, and then they're going to wait and start greasing all the fittings and everything, and then as soon as it gets down to about, they'll let that drain probably, but they're not going to let it drain very long for very much. I don't know if you can see that draining out of there. Once it stops being a steady stream and starts to drip, that's when they're going to put the plug back in. So you don't really get all the old oil out, or you don't get as much as you could if you just be patient and wait. But those places make their money by how many cars go through. That's why I do not ever recommend taking them to a quick lube. While the oil is draining, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check the tire pressures. And if you know, on the driver's side door, especially on newer vehicles, there's always this right here that tells you what the tire pressure is. Okay, so we're looking for the weights. Oh, actually, this one doesn't say what the tire pressure is. Huh. While we're waiting for the oil to drain, we're going to check the tire pressures, and inside the driver door, either on the door itself, like right up in here, or over here on the door post, it's always going to tell you what the tire pressure is on this. This one is 32 psi front and back. Also, while the oil is draining, we're going to check the fluids. We'll start with the brake fluid. This one you can just kind of shake it like that, and you can see the fluid line moving like right up in here, so it's good and full. Then we're going to check the power steering fluid, which I'm going to need a rag for. I'm going to see if I can set this up. This card is filthy, and I'm not going to worry about trying to clean everything off. Get that set there. There we go. So here's this reservoir for the power steering fluid. I'm going to just kind of wipe it off. I'm not going to worry about getting it perfectly clean because you'll never do it on this vehicle. Okay, wipe that off. Some vehicles use power steering fluid, some vehicles use automatic transmission fluid. This one I believe is automatic transmission fluid. It's full. I can see the line way up here. I don't know if you can see that in there or not, but it's way right there. It's actually a little bit over full, but it's not going to be a problem. The person's been driving it like that. Okay, now check the washer fluid and the coolant overflow. Which the coolant overflow is this one right back here. That one there, and I can't tell. Oh, okay, yeah, I see it. It's like up here, so we're good on that. I would normally check the air filter, but I know this one needs to be replaced. I'm not going to replace it today because I don't have one. And then usually with the washer fluid, I know this one's full though because I just filled it up not long ago. I would just top that off regardless, but I'm not going to do that. And that's it for now. Once we get it back on the ground and we start it, we'll get it a little bit warmed up. Then we'll check the transmission fluid. This is the transmission dipstick right there, and then you have the engine oil dipstick right there. Sometimes they're a different color. Usually the transmission dipstick has an orange top and the oil has a yellow. Usually. It's not always the case, but make sure you're putting the right fluids in the right places if you're not familiar with this kind of work. Which that's what this video is for people who've maybe never done it. Okay, as you can see, it's just slowed down to a drip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull the filter off the rest of the way. It's good to keep a finger in the middle of the filter and just rotate the filter because it's going to come loose all of a sudden and it will make a mess. So just keep a finger in the middle and keep pressure on it. There it is, it's loose. And there you go. Now we're going to wait for that to quit dripping. Now the oil coming out of the drain plug, a quick lube place would go ahead and put the plug back in right now and start filling. Some other guy up top would start filling up the oil once the drain plug was in. But they're not going to wait for it to stop dripping or even slow down. As soon as it stops being a steady stream, they're going to throw the plug in it and they're going to yank the filter off. They're going to throw a new filter on and out the door it goes. And it's just that fast. And I don't like that because it leaves a lot of the old oil still in the pan. And I like for mine to get everything that I can out of it. You can't always do that, but I'm not in a hurry. I have all day, so I'm going to let it stop dripping almost completely before I put the plug back in and before I put another filter on it. So now the oil is all drained. It's doing pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wipe this off real good. Wipe the filter adapter off real good. step after wiping everything down is to pre-lube the filter. So we're just going to pour it right in the middle there. Right up until there. And we're going to let it sit for a minute. And you can see it kind of going down. And I'm going to pour a little more. We're going to try and get this filter as full as we can. The filter is screwed on at a slight angle, so I can't just fill it up completely because it would make a mess. Okay, that's about as good as that's going to get, I think. And no, it's not completely full. See, it's going down a little bit. Then we're just going to take just a little dab of oil, and we're just going to get our finger wet, just kind of smooth it around here. Now that's ready. Now it's time to put the plug and the filter back on. I'm just going to wipe this down a little bit one last time. Never, as I said before, never ever start the plug with any kind of tool. Always start it with your fingers. And run it all the way in with your fingers. Once that's in, there's a torque spec, but I'm not going to torque it. I'm just going to tighten it up. I'm going to push this back out of the way so that I can get in here. Just good and snug. You don't have to kill it, just good and snug. Then put the filter on. You just go all the way up until it stops. And when you can feel it when it touches, you just keep going a little bit more. And then that's good enough. And it tells you on here like 1.5 turns or something after it touches, but I like to just get it good and snug with my hand. You don't want to use a wrench or anything to tighten that up because then it's overly tight and you'll have a hard time getting it off. So, plugs in, the filter's on, we're ready to put oil in it. manufacturers will tell you, if you look at the cap right there, it says engine oil, 520. So they'll tell you the weight, and engine oil in the dipstick. That says, that'll tell you what kind of brake fluid to use, engine coolant, washer fluid, and power steering fluid. So I've kind of wiped that off, but we're going to open this up. We're just going to set it right over here. It won't go nowhere. And then I'm going to kind of wipe this off. Here's what you want to do. You want to wipe around like this and out. And then around like this and out. Because you don't want to put dirt inside. Okay. Now we're ready to start pulling it up. So just set this down. See, there we go. This engine holds just over 4 quarts. So we're just going to put 4 quarts in it. Then I'm going to drive it down off the ramps, and then we'll shut it down and we'll check the oil. Never check the oil with the vehicle running. Always shut it off, let it sit for just a few seconds or a minute. Then pull the dipstick out, wipe it off, put it back in, and then check the oil. Because when the engine's running, it slings oil all up and down the dipstick. So when you pull the dipstick out, if you don't wipe it off and then put it back in, you'll get a bad reading on it. It'll look like it's way over full when it's really not. And if you want to use a funnel to do this, it does make it easier. But I'm not going to use one. Okay, that's 4 quarts. So what I'm going to do, I spilled just a little bit of oil just around the opening here, so I'm just going to wipe that off. And I spilled a little drop right there. I'm going to wipe that off. Okay. putting the cap back on, you don't have to tighten the dog's knot out of it. Just snug. Okay, so we've got it off the ramps, it's sitting level. We'll pull the dipstick, and we'll wipe the dipstick off as it comes out. Now here's when you check it. Put the dipstick back in the tube, all the way, and then pull it out. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see that, it's right in the middle of the cross hatches, which is where you want it. So, 4 quarts, and it's perfect. Okay, I don't think you're going to be able to see this. No, I'm not going to be able to see. But, anyways, if you pull the transmission dipstick out, it says, do not overfill, do not add oil if level is between the lower holes for cold oil, which is 80 degrees Fahrenheit or less. The upper holes for hot oil, 180 degrees Fahrenheit. And then it tells you use Mopar ATF plus 4. Then it tells you how to check it. It says idle and park. So what you do is you start the vehicle, you put it in park, or leave it in park because it should already be there. And then if you want to check the oil cold, you have the 2 lower holes, this one and this one. Then you have the 2 upper here and here. For cold, it needs to be between these first 2 holes here. And for hot, it needs to be between these top 2 holes. And this engine is cold, so we're going to get to it. I'm just going to stick that back in. And we do the same thing that we did with the oil. We pull the dipstick out and wipe it off at the same time. And stick it back in, all the way, pull it out. And what you've got, it's right at the bottom of the second hole. So it's above the first hole and right at the bottom of the second hole. It's hard to see it, but we're perfect. That is how you change the oil.